of anyone in Australia, who should I get on the artist series? And he said, Tim Minchin. So that was about 3 years ago. So
Amazing.
you are...
Fucking hell, Howie. Took you a bit.
Well, I know. Well...
I'm a songwriter, but I play concerts. I used to be a comedian, but I write musicals and I act. I'm one of those people.
So compared to like a concert pianist...
Piece of shit. There are classical players who come and see me and jazzers who come and see me who do think I'm a good pianist. Compared to the proper world-class people, I'm a hack, but I'm probably a better pianist than Elton John and Billy Joel. So I was like throwing myself around the stage and they're like, yeah, mate, that's a bit much. You could go back behind the keys, love ya.
Tell me about having consumable hair.
I would sit on stage in a t-shirt and jeans with my sort of half grown out curly hair, and I look at the footage, there was no icon, there was no idea of me as a kind of character. Like, you don't get to be an artist just because you want to be.
So you said things went boom.
I wrote Matilda. No, I don't want to sound like a wanker. It's the most successful British musical of the century.
What is LA like when you're that guy?
Hey, Tim, it's so great to meet you. I am such a big fan, which can mean they're such a big fan and they've watched everything I've ever done. Or 2 minutes ago, my assistant put your Wikipedia page in front of me and I've never fucking heard of you. They all say the same thing.
What's involved in being a guest in that 6 minutes of being good on Conan, so people say, I want to go and see this guy?
I've never been asked about this stuff.
Well, this man's wandered in, to be fair. He just looks a touch dishevelled. I think he hasn't been out of bed long. We've got him a croissant.
I haven't had time to get shevelled.
We've got him a coffee. His name is Tim Minchin. There's excitement in the building that he's here. Tim, thank you for joining me on the Howie Games non-artist series, because you don't want to be referred to as an artist.
Howie called me an artist. No, you can look. It took me a while to sort of think that was an all right thing to say about yourself, but I do refer to myself as an artist.
Well, we can just roll out a pure sport episode with you if you want.
Yeah, well, I think I'd survive it.
I've got no doubt you'd survive it. I often come into... Well, let's start right from the start. If I met you in the pub, Tim, and we were having a chat, and you said, oh, Howie, what do you do? And I told you what I do for a living. I said, Tim, what do you do? How would you answer that?
Let's go through it. Howie, what do you do?
I work as a sports broadcaster. I commentate on cricket and football, which is, for me, the best job on the planet. I just did the AFL Grand Final. I'm about to do the India Test Series, which I can't wait for. And I host this little show, Tim, called the Howie Games, which started 7 years ago. Right. And it is all-consuming, but the highlight of my working week.
How amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a musician.
A musician.
Yeah, that's how I'd answer it.
Okay. Would you expand on that?
If we got chatting and you were actually... So you just need an answer, really.
Yeah.
And I think musician feels like the thing to me that is core. But then, if I end up having to explain myself, I tend to be nowhere near as clear and sort of, I don't know, factual as you, because I think I get... flustered about how I'm meant to, because I could say, oh, like I'm like world renowned, and I'm never going to say that.
I'd lead with that for sure, Tim.
But I would say, oh, like I'm a songwriter, but I play concerts. I used to be a comedian, but I write musicals and I act. I'm one of those people. That's what I do. Yeah.
And last night you were doing that in my neck of the woods. I live 20 minutes out of Geelong.
Uh-huh.
You're in G-Town. How did it go down in Geelong?
Great. I was at the Costa Hall, which
beautiful spot.
It's slightly frustrating to be doing a book interview show in one of the most beautiful music venues in the country, because I played there just a few months ago with my piano. And last night was just an interview with the excellent Jacinta Parsons. So you're sitting in that hall going, man, I'd rather be playing piano, and the audience would rather I was playing piano.
I'm sure they would.
But at the moment I'm doing this book, so I'm doing a book tour, and they were amazing. These people come and just watch me talk about my ideas and talk about how I see the world, and more than anything, what they're watching is a person trying to get good at unpacking ideas rather than having big formed opinions. I mean, I have big formed opinions, but I'm really interested in sort of modelling a type of conversation where you're contemplative and consider the possibility that you might still have more to learn and all that stuff, So, and everyone sits on the edge of their seats and
I've
doesn't
got no
seem to
doubt
get
they
too
do.
bored.
The book is called Tim Minchin. You Don't Have to Have a Dream: Advice for the Incrementally Ambitious. I read it. My wife read it. My 14-year-old read it, which was fantastic. She's a big reader. We will get to the book. Okay. I normally come in here with a loose plan.
All right.
And I say this to you, Tim. I come in here today, I drove up from the coast, not with trepidation, but a real lack of sureness as to what we were going to talk about, because I listened to a couple of podcasts you'd done, and it became very clear to me that you were creatively, artistically and intellectually, Tim, on a much higher plane than what I'm operating on.
I thought you were going to say tiresome.
No. So I thought I need to be sharp because this man's on many levels above me in many aspects of the thought process of life.
All right, well, here's a highfalutin thought process.
Go on then.
I'm not claiming I'm humble, or it's nothing to do with that. I have a sort of way I see the world that when you say that I'm above you, I go, oh no, that I don't even, it sort of does not compute. Like I don't feel like, I don't think the things I find important, I don't think by finding them important, that makes me better than someone who finds a different set of values important. It doesn't mean that I don't think there are good ideas and bad ideas and important conversations and sort of waste of time conversations. But I don't, like if I came on here, firstly, with what you do and what you've done, you're obviously extremely bright and good at what you do. But if I came on here, I guess I could sort of come on to show that I'm like a book smart guy.
Yes.
You know, and that would be a really fucking weird thing for me to do because it's not my only value system and it's not a thing that I value more than anything else.
Well, that's
trying
good.
to talk above someone would be that's like meeting people where they are is what you do for a job.
Yes.
And that's what I do for a job as well. So that doesn't mean I'm going to change any dials. It just means I'll hear what you want to talk about and talk about that.
Well, that fills me with joy because this is ostensibly a storytelling podcast and we delve into some deep themes, but we don't need to delve too much into some of those areas in many ways. I say that respectfully, but
you don't need everything unpacked like I just did to your question.
Well, I've got so many questions for you, but they're probably slightly different to the typical questions you get asked.
Which makes me so happy.
Well, that's good. But before we get to that, to explain to you the impact, and I want to know how this makes you feel. So, producer Tommy texted me on the way up saying, who's Howie got on Tim Minchin? They lost their shit that you were coming in here. Then our audio producer of this show said, I can't believe I'm in a meeting. I would love to meet Tim. His description of taking life incrementally in a goal perspective completely changed my life. And he was gutted he couldn't meet you. I spoke to my sister, who's a doctor, very intellectual, last night. No interest in my podcast. No. Who's you got on? Tim Minchin. Oh, he is incredible. So there's this vast different group of the community that thinks you are the man. And so what is that like to hear?
I mean, it's amazing. And I think unfortunately you get used to stuff and sometimes I take for granted that I have impact. And but I was talking about this on stage in one of these interview shows. It blows my mind, and maybe this is stuff that you talk about in this podcast I don't know, but about like, staying aware of the things that you are blessed with,
yes.
Like staying aware of your blessings. It is a great human frustration. And I wrote a musical about this really. In the musical of Groundhog Day is really about like everything you have to be happy is available to you. You just got to shift your perspective a bit, which is largely true. And I have like, in my past, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of communications from people, from just people who love my comedy, to redheads who think the Ginger song is funny, to autistic people who find the song Quiet from Matilda gave them a way to communicate their feelings to their friends, to survivors of abuse that got something out of my Pell song, and on and on and on. Because I've been so lucky to have this wide-ranging career, I know that I have a wide range of people who have got something out of what I've done.
That you've positively impacted.
Amazing.
Well, that's good to hear.
Absolutely amazing. And it's the most valuable thing in my career, more valuable than the paychecks and stuff, which isn't to demean how fun paychecks are. But
gratitude doesn't pay the mortgage.
Exactly. But gratitude for others' gratitude is an amazing feeling. But I'm not very good at keeping it up in front of my face. I get very caught up in not feeling great about shit.
To put it in front of your face, Das, who's been with this show for 5 years, when are you interviewing Tim Minchin, the speech he did about short-term goals instead of setting you insights some far away, can you please ask him about that? It had a massive impact on my career thus far and has proven to be very true. So this is a 30-year-old dude in Melbourne that has come across what you're doing and you've had a positive impact on his life.
And part of why I love that is when I made that speech, which is the core speech in this book, which is the speech which starts that you don't have to have a dream, which is the lesson he's kind of talking about. That wasn't what I was doing. I wasn't a public speaker. I was a comedian who did musicals. And someone just said, we're going to give you one of these, pretend doctorates. And would you do a speech? And I just thought, well, I'm 38, 39, whatever I was at that point. I guess I better just tell these graduates what I reckon I've figured out is valuable in the last 20 years, since I graduated. And the impact of that has, it's so weird that of all the things I've tried to get good at, I don't know, sports metaphor, it's like you spent 20 years training to be a footy player and one day you just go to the bowling lanes and just find that you can bowl strikes. Like it was like, not that I think it was a skill set I discovered, but it was an impact I discovered. And it just, tens and tens of millions of people have watched that bloody thing. And which is why it's a book. And that made me feel particularly amazing because I'm like, so what people want from me is partly that they like my fast fingers and blah, blah, but it's partly that I have something about talking about what it is to be a person and something really basic and human that I don't have to do 10,000 hours of practice. If I just share my thoughts about that, then people might grab onto them. And that's been partly a cause. So that was 11 years ago, that speech. And in the last decade, I have done more. And I'm not the old stuff where I'm polemic, polemic means like angry, like cross satire,
I like
I'm
that
not
you
right.
explain to me.
No, because I spoke to my wife the other day and said, I don't know, you use the word polemic all the time. I don't know what that means.
I must admit, I was thinking, I'm reasonably well read. I've got no idea what polemic means.
So because I use it all the time because it was sort of my genre, but I didn't know that word. I know lots of words that I just learned in my 40s, So a polemicist is someone who's like eviscerating. There's another word, like who's like sharp-edged with their criticism. Like really critical. And, so my song about the good cardinal and stuff, that would be called a form of polemic. And so the last 10 years I've decided I have a capacity to be a bit warmer, and in the current era I think being warmer rather than being slicing dicing with my ideas, I can be a bit more expansive and open-minded, and that too can have an impact.
I like the warmer because as I said, I read the book. My favourite part in this, and I loved when you kept looking. I just
saw what you circled, and it's my favourite part.
Well, I hope
it's
so.
It's the one I have to remind myself of.
Well, I'll ask you about that. But I loved in the speech. So whoever the dean, the man in charge,
Michael Chaney,
right? You just kept looking back at Michael when you were dropping some pretty loose statements, just to see, is Michael kicking me out? Is he going along with this?
Is this what they wanted
but
from
no,
me?
And he was laughing away. Okay, number 7 in your messages: define yourself by what you love. Be pro stuff, not anti. I like to think myself as pro. As I've got a bit older,
feel like a pro guy.
I'm definitely a pro guy, but as I've got older, anti starts to creep in, and I'm trying to stamp it
understood.
out. I'm trying to stamp it out. I'll tell you a story about a dog in a minute. But define yourself by what you love. At the moment, in a reasonably brief answer, what are you loving at the moment? You like how I put reasonably brief in there, didn't I?
Good luck, mate. You got the wrong guy.
I'm trying to control you as best I can without controlling
What am I loving at the moment? I'm loving trying to get better at loving stuff. Like I've just moved into a house that my wife and I and many, many incredible builders spent 2 years renovating, and trying to be short, I'm the sort of personality that'll have big complicated feelings about, I've got this lovely house, do I deserve a lovely house? What about people who don't have a lovely house?
Just move in, man.
And I've really gone, mate, don't spend 2 years renovating a house and then bitch about, like your complex feelings. Like it was my birthday on Monday, and I just...
How old?
49.
Right.
I just woke up late and had breakfast and got in this pool that we made, and I just had the best day. So my my big journey is learning to let myself enjoy the simple things in life without overthinking them and thinking there's an idea called survivor guilt. Like, because I've done well, I should feel bad because other people are, and I get a bit caught up in those ideas. So my big B pro stuff is actually just counting my blessings, is enjoying the good things in my life. And I don't mean like buying Mercedes and bling. I just mean the really simple stuff. I go, I'm home with my kids, which I'm not always, and that's great.
That's the one that I'll get to the second one that resonated with me with, but I'll tell you a brief story about a dog. My daughter, who is 14, heavens above. How old are your children?
Yeah, 18 and 15.
Boys, girls?
Girl 18, boy 15.
Okay,
yeah.
Well that's a 4-hour discussion.
Yeah. We'll have it afterwards.
My 14-year-old has wanted a dog since she was 6.
Yeah.
My son, 12, bit ambivalent. My wife, a dog would be good. But that means it's going to cause disruption in the house. Yeah. It's going to stop. We love to travel. Travel's our thing. What are we going to do with the dog when we're away? So I'm thinking about all the antis.
Yeah.
And it hit me. That's not what I want to do as I get older, because I see the older generation often start with no. So I thought, okay, let's focus on the pro, as you talked about. Imagine the love and joy it'll bring into the house.
Yeah.
So 6 weeks ago we got the dog, and it is the most positive. There's been
unbelievable.
There's been difficulties. There's been a pain, but the way it's united my two children, myself, my wife, the love this little dog has brought into the house in 6 weeks, I can't describe to you. And I'm not a dog guy.
No.
Be pro, not anti.
Yeah. And so
I don't want to be anti.
There's a sort of a slight addendum that might be worth just mentioning about that. I say be pro stuff, not just anti stuff, because there's a role, and has been in my career, for punching up and like going, that's bullshit and that's bullshit. That's kind of part of that's how I made my name, calling out bullshit. And so there's a role for being anti stuff, for standing up to stuff, but define yourself by what you love. Try not to define yourself as anti things. Like, don't hang your identity on the things you think are bad in the world. Hang your identity on the things you think are beautiful in the world.
Yeah.
Say, I'm a person who loves, and then from that place of knowing who you are, you can fight the good fight. It's just that kids these days seem to pin their identity on the things they think are terrible in the world, and I understand where that comes from, but it's toxic. Yeah. Loved the dog story. Had a similar story when we moved to Australia a few years ago.
What was your dog's name?
Oh, dog's Sonny.
Oh, Sonny.
He's 7 now. He's a total pain.
What type of dog is he?
He's a massive groodle.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, that was part of the deal. We're moving back to Australia, which for Sarah and I was moving back to Australia for the kids. So we're born overseas, and we're going to get a dog, and that was kind of enough to make them go, fine, we can live wherever.
And
we have a dog?
Has Sonny provided joy, light, and love?
Yeah, definitely. Mostly my wife fell in love with him, and they're like this inseparable pair. But certainly in the first year of his life, he was salve, yeah.
Number 8, respect people with less power, be kind. I always find it frustrates me when people are interviewing someone and they tell the story for them. So rather than me telling the story, you told a brief story about a cafe, for example.
Oh, yeah.
In relation to this, and I loved it. I loved that little brief story.
Yeah, it's just a little bit in the book, and I think I just say I have made decisions about, and rather than specific anecdotes that'll get me in trouble. I mean, I have had meetings, just casual meetings in cafes. One particular one that had a big impact on something that I did, where I just watched the person treat the waiter not terribly, just with quite rudely. And this is a billionaire or a multi-millionaire treating someone working for 15 just like shit. And I just went, I just now know everything I need to know. I mean, it's not everything, and people come from different places, and it can be cultural and all that. But for me, that's like, I'm not saying he's an evil bloke, but that take that attitude to what I'm hoping to do with this person, and that's absolutely unacceptable. And I can't train this person that you don't act like that to people with less power than you. They're too far gone. They're in their 60s or whatever. So yeah, I think I think that's a no-brainer. I mean, and it's hard. That's the point. This is the point I try to make to my kids, because everyone says be kind in their Instagram bios and stuff. But what they mean is be kind to people like me. And being kind is easy when you like the person, or when they're just a slightly less powerful version of yourself, with that look like you and have opinions like you, but just, maybe not as high up the hierarchy or whatever. But it's hard when it's someone who you think's a dick, or when you're under huge pressure and you're about to go on stage in front of 10,000 people and there's something wrong with the kit that shouldn't be wrong with the kit. But it's just on pure utility. Even if all you are is a psychopath who wants to move through the world easily, it's still the best strategy to make sure everyone around you feels respected. That'll come back to you. And if you're not a psychopath and are actually interested in other people's experiences of the world, then again, that's the right strategy.
In any industry, but in your industry, it's a bit like what I do. You're getting your mic put on, and you treat with the audio person with respect. When something goes wrong with the mic, they're there for you.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're a prick.
And look, they might be shit audio engineer. Maybe they shouldn't have the bloody job and they're no good. And at that point, you got to make a decision. But it's still the best strategy to... And kindness might not always be, you're an amazing audio engineer, you're just not for us right now. Kindness might be, we can see exactly where you want to be, and we think you're a really good person. So we don't think you're ready for this. We made a mistake. And, that might be kindness. But the way in which you go about it, when I see people, I'm absolutely sure that people who treat people poorly, it comes from their own anxiety and their own insecurities, right? So that's another big long answer conversation, because no one who feels good about themselves treats not powerful people like shit. That's only people who are feeling either really anxious and can't control their fight or flight, or they just feel insecure and they need to flex. So it never comes from a place of power. Yeah,
it's a big word with my kids at the moment.
Yeah,
flexing.
flex.
Sport. Where ostensibly the Artist series, sometimes people, like Paul Kelly came on here and he could talk forever about cricket and football and why he writes songs about that. I saw him at Harmer Hall, heavens above. Now there's a man.
He's a beautiful man.
He is a beautiful man. Will Anderson, who I grew up with, talked a lot about sport.
He's a beautiful man.
Well, when I was starting the Artist series, he was one of my first guests, and I said to him, of anyone in Australia, who should I get on the Artist series? And he said, Tim Minchin. So that was about 3 years ago. So
amazing.
Fucking
hell, Howie, took you a bit.
Well, I know. Well, mate, you're the bloke travelling the world. You got managed.
I'm very grateful to be here, and I'm glad Will said that, because I could talk about sport, and I could talk about these ideas through the lens of sport very happily. I found myself talking about my hockey career on stage last night. And
tell us about
fell apart.
Were you a hockey player as a kid?
I was I was much more into hockey than music or theatre or anything all the way through. I played hockey all the way till after I was married and moved to Melbourne in 2002. I joined Q Hockey Club to try and play. At that stage I wasn't training enough, so I was playing sort of 3s, 4s, I never got to Premier League. This is all hockey tour. I don't suppose you have any.
But we've had Jamie Dwyer on this podcast.
Yeah, well, there you go. So
we know hockey. Sport is our area. We're comfortable here.
I played at a good enough level that I played at times against some of those cats.
Right.
I never played against Jamie. We're a different
what
generation.
Position?
I tended to be a right wing, inside forward, centre forward. I wasn't a great striker. I was a good... I just don't think I had that vision. But I had good stick skills, and I can run and run and run and run. So at the end of the game, I'd still be
like when the Com Games Olympics come on?
It's not easy to get hockey, and when you're travelling all the time, it's not hard. But I do watch a bit. It's been hard. It hasn't been amazing in the last couple of years for the men or the women actually. But yes, I watch as much as I can. But I watch as a viewer, I'm a huge AFL fan.
Are you? Who do you go for?
I'm a Dockers, died in the world Dockers.
Are you Dockers?
Fan. Yeah. And I know, I've got a photo of me from the last few weeks talking to Natty Fife, and I talked to Pav, and I talked to Sonny. My dog's named Sonny after Sonny Walters.
Well, this is...
and my granddad played for Essendon in 2 grand finals.
What was his name?
Vic Fisher. He played in the drawn grand final of 1948 and the replay, which they lost. And then he played the winning grand final, Essendon Blues, wasn't it? 1949.
Tim, if anyone ever says to me, which podcast should I listen to of yours of the 220-odd episodes?
Yeah.
There's a fella called Jack Jones.
Oh, yeah, I know who Jack Jones is.
So he would have played with your grandfather.
I know. That was his era.
Papua New Guinea in the war and started playing for Essendon. And
my granddad flew Lancaster Bombers. He never saw action, but came back and played.
Really?
He played for West Perth in Perth, and then the Bombers, sort of off the bench on the wing, not tall, fast as hell. Different game obviously back then.
Well, so you have got sports chops, and in relation to that, I between footy and cricket, there's a short break. I last year went away on a similar trip and I'm going away next Thursday on a trip with 3 mates, including your man Nat Fyfe, to go surfing.
Yeah, well,
so there you go.
I mean, Nat's
now he's a deep thinking character.
He is, yeah.
He is an extraordinary character.
He's a different cat as well.
So very, but he's in India at the moment.
Yeah, right.
he's finding
going all the way.
He's finding his
guru.
He
might start a cult. I'd follow it.
I think I'd jump on board it as well. Running.
Yeah, and then behind it all is running. Yeah.
So you run?
Yeah, still. I mean, I ran from my hotel.
That's because you're running late, mate. Sprinting to get here.
I woke up 10 minutes before I had to be here.
What does running do for you?
I ran around the town yesterday. I did a 10K yesterday.
Did you?
I'm slow as shit at the moment.
Right.
But,
that's the great run in Melbourne, the tan.
Yeah.
What does physical exercise do for your mental state of mind?
I mean, I just can't. It's another thing I feel incredibly grateful for, because I know it's not so easy. But I've run, 5s and 10s basically without much of a break since I was about 15.
Have you?
Yeah.
Why?
And I don't run competitive. I've done like 4 races ever with a bib on my chest. I've done the Melbourne Zoo 10 or whatever that was. I've done a single half marathon, a couple of fun runs.
Did a half marathon?
Yeah.
That's good going.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I did. I mean,
do you love the pain of it, the thought of doing something, or the moment you stop and the endorphins hit and you're like, I've done it?
I suppose I love all of it. I love. So I did my half in 91 minutes or something, like not slow, but not a gun. And like it's like
that's just over 5 minute Ks.
Yeah,
that's good going.
Oh, no, it's got to be under 5 minute Ks.
91 minutes, 5:21. Oh no, it is. It's like 4:50s.
Yeah,
sorry, Tim.
So for many years I ran 40-minute 10Ks. That was my thing. So
4-minute Ks.
Yeah, but that's so. I'm not an athlete, but that's a good amateur runner for people who aren't runners. And what I loved, and maybe what says something about my personality, is I got to the end of my half marathon and I wasn't checking my watch particularly, and my splits were like absolutely like it was a robot running. Like it's just I get into a place where I go, I wonder if I can sustain this, and I just insist that I do in my head. Like it's like that. Does that say something about what I love? It's like
absolutely.
Setting myself as I say in the book, a short-term goal. It's like and believing in my ability to overcome the thing in my brain that makes you want to stop. And yes, that's a bit alpha-y stuff, although people who listen to this podcast, I'm sure, don't think it's weird when I talk about it in front of my audiences. They're like, why do you want to thrash yourself? And I'm like, have you ever thrashed yourself? Exactly. You'll know why. Because it's like setting yourself a goal, overcoming adversity, overcoming the hurdles that jump up in front of you, and the endorphins that come with having achieved that, there's nothing like it. And then there's just the physical thing. When I go, do you know what? I'm going to lengthen my stride a bit here. I think I've got a bit more in me. And, you start running past people. It's just, you feel like, it just feels so good.
It does.
Especially if you've got a bit of a long stride. There's something about a long stride that feels amazing. Yeah.
I told you I would hopefully ask you questions you haven't been asked before. I guarantee you, in any of your travels, you've never been asked this question, whether you can answer it or not. Fremantle are interested in the premiership player from Richmond, Shea Bolton.
Yeah.
What pick, if you're Fremantle, are you giving up for Bolton? Because Mickey Walters, as good as he's been, might be coming to the back end. So, Tim, you're in charge of the pick. What are you giving up?
I don't know. I actually don't know enough about how the draft works to know what pick. I would be a bit worried. I mean, if you let Sonny go, which just breaks my heart in all directions, and get Shea Bolton, you're sort of getting like for like style of player, and I don't know, but is Bolton young enough to be like what's his clock? How old's Shea?
Yeah, I'd have to be 28 or 29.
Yes,
I'm saying off the top of my
Maybe more
26. Maybe more 26.
Sonny's only 31, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like, So,
Well, it's
I
probably
don't know.
it'd be more 26, I would have thought.
Yeah,
probably
right.
overestimated. If
So
you could
what
pick,
your worry is that suddenly he's having hammy problems, but
so if you could bring any
he's
player.
a genius though, Shea.
Oh, yeah.
He's absolutely
He's a
beautiful
gun.
player.
You can bring any player.
Yeah.
There's another question never been asked from the AFL that's currently playing to Fremantle. Now, you could blow up the whole of West Australia by saying Harley Reid, and then, I said
Harley
we're not
Reid.
about headlines.
I don't know. Harley Reid would do that thing that Buddy was doing to Sydney before he retired, and that Nat was probably before he changed his role.
Yes.
Which is that he'd destabilise our midfield. I mean, I don't know if you're. I mean, obviously, I don't. I need to be asking you about this, but you don't always want the best player in the world dropped into your frickin' midfield you've been working on.
No. So who do you want? Don't avoid the question on me, Tim.
I don't know who we want because I just feel like we've got the perfect list. I mean,
you perfectly list you the premiers, mate.
I know, but that's what.
I hate to say
that's
that.
not the case,
No.
is it? It's
No.
not the case that if you have a perfect list, you're the premiers.
No, absolutely.
We were still often running the youngest team in the league last year, even though we feel like we've been building this.
You're one win away from finish second on the ladder to having 2 home finals.
Exactly. And we beat Sydney twice. And do we beat Sydney twice this season?
Yeah, I think you do.
I mean, and we usually beat Geelong. And there's something, I don't know who I'd bring in. And I'm not such a AFL.
I know you've done
Dockers
well.
fan. I'm not such an AFL guy that I can go through everyone. I mean, Shea Bolton's a great, that sort of, because we got Jackson and we've got Josh Tracy, and suddenly our overhead problem, which was our big, we could not mark competitively.
Well, Tracy's injury
that
probably
really
cost you that
disadvantaged us.
spot in
and
the
we
finals,
could feel
don't we?
when Tracy got injured that day.
Yep.
You could feel the team go, oh,
Yeah.
because he was like, oh my God, we've got this. We didn't know.
You got your next Matt
We didn't know
Pavlich.
Josh was the next
Yeah.
Matt Pavlich. We thought it was, Tabs, but it's Josh. And then we could. I felt. I think I was at that game. Was it late in the Sydney game?
Yeah.
I was there. It wasn't the game where we won after the siren because old mate didn't make the distance.
Logan McDonald.
I was sitting next to the president and CEO of the Dockers Club.
How was their
very,
response?
very tense. And there were some blokes in a box next to us just being such bogans. And I just wanted to say, these guys actually, their whole life is in the Dockers, so try not to be such bogans.
It's a game of passion.
Be pro stuff, not just anti stuff.
Right, we'll leave footy. You've answered footy nicely.
But I there's something about Freo that feels connected to the culture of Fremantle as a city where my family has a pub, and I'm deeply, that feels a bit like when the moment comes to be one of these psycho good clubs that they sort of don't know what that feels like.
Well, they haven't done it
because they haven't done it. The club hasn't done it, but yeah, I don't know. Do you know what? And this is very uncool in sports conversations, but I have just got to a point when they lose, when I feel like they should win, I'm filthy. And
Are you? And so it affects your mood?
It really does.
No,
and
you're a hardcore supporter.
I don't think that's great.
But it
makes me makes me grumpy around my kids.
It's
and
meant
just
to.
like, what are you doing?
It's a bloke's kicking a football.
I'm really working on going, I love the Dockers. I love the culture of the club. I think they're a kind club. I just celebrate their wins. I don't know. It's hard to be a passionate supporter, but I do.
Anti.
I just celebrate their wins, and I try to have real sympathy for I have huge sympathy for the boys because I got to know a couple of them. So that makes you immediately more less like, why aren't they winning? Like sometimes when I'm off the social media now, but sometimes when I go to the threads and you watch their own supporters, I'm just like, what is wrong with you? You don't talk like that about your own club. Anyway,
if I could do one thing for AFL supporters, and in a way this is what our job is to highlight that we did an episode a few weeks ago, an artist series with Isaac Rankin, plays for Adelaide, plays the guitar. Cody Waitman, plays for the Bulldogs, young artist. Christian Petrarca, plays for Melbourne.
Yeah.
Loves his cooking, he's a chef. So 3 artists talking about football. And, just trying to, through their words, explain that they're not just footballers. They're people, and they've got a mum and dad that read this stuff about them, and they've got feelings, and they're not bulletproof. If I could explain one thing to sports fans is that love these guys, but understand what you say about them can hurt them and can hurt their families, and it can affect them.
And I know how that feels.
Yeah, I bet you do.
And there's a bigger conversation that I won't be too long on, but like human instinct to be tribal and to get one-eyed about stuff is very strong. You know, you rejoice when you win a game because Logan McDonald didn't make the distance from outside 50 after the siren. But you know, if you're on the other side, you'd be devastated, as would Logan, as would his parents. And
yes, who have driven him to football since he was 6 years of age.
Yeah. And so we know all that, but we're so tribal. And it's like, I find if it's something I can work on in my love of sport, then maybe that work will translate to being less tribal about the things that really affect the world, like your political party and what you think about, you know, what as a woman you think about men and what as a man you think about women. We gather ourselves into teams and we wear the jumper. I wrote this song about the Sydney Opera House called Play It Safe, and it goes, and it's if anyone listening to this doesn't know my work and wants to watch one thing,
we'll whack it in here.
Go and watch Play It Safe, because it's about the Opera House. I was commissioned to write the song, but it's a satire. It's written from the point of view of your grumpy uncle, and it's like, don't show off and don't stick your head out from the crowd. They'll take it off, and just sit up the back and judge others. It'll keep them from judging you. These are the lyrics. And then it goes into this other big swing gear, and it goes, you got to stick to your convictions. You got to nail down your views. You got to steer clear of that discomfort you feel when you walk in another person's shoes. You got to work out who your team is and wear the flag with pride. Find a box that makes you comfortable and stay the fuck inside. You know, it's like, and so I'm really interested in this side of it as well. Like, I'm a tribal monster when I think about the Dockers. But that's like the worst of me in a way. I'm not saying don't love your footy, don't love your team, but note that is the worst in us, the one-eyed, no empathy for the other side. It is the animal in us that we got to check at least. We got to check it.
I don't mind I go to...
The passion.
Yeah, I go to 3 footy games a week, and it's the same when you go to cricket. I'm privileged enough to see the cricket in India, which is a whole nother experience.
God.
But what I don't understand, and this is again a discussion for another day, I'm all about going and supporting my side.
When they boo the other side,
I don't get that. Like, have the joy.
Yeah.
Be pro.
Yeah.
Not anti.
But I get where it comes from. But I reckon if I could change one thing, it would be a sort of more gentlemanly, to use the bloke version of it, but a more like, I think come on, the Dockers. Like, I can't help myself. But when they boo another player, like,
this is what I don't even. I've never gone to a sport and booed anyone.
I just can't imagine it.
No.
But those people coming from, there are people who go to sport who really,
I paid my money. I can do what I want.
Their sport team is the most important thing in their life, and they hate their freaking job, and they feel a bit shit about some stuff. But this is the thing they've attached their identity to.
Yeah.
So I'm not judging so much as just thinking, like, wouldn't it be cool? Like, when it's my club, because I think the Dockers have a good culture. I think even just J-Lo being the coach, there's a gentle culture. You know, Longmuir's a country boy from out in the wheat belt, and there's a real, I like it. I like our supporters. When I'm at a game and I hear our supporters boo, I feel really a bit of shame about it. And I'd love to be a member of a club who is known for not doing that stuff. I wonder how you build that culture inside a club.
Well, we could go to the footy together. Yeah. I'd cheer for the Hawks. You'd cheer for the Dockers, and there'd be no negativity, and the world would be rainbows and unicorns.
I'm pretty angry
with
you. In the second half of the season. Can we do it in the first half of the season?
You talked about where Justin's from. Let's wind back for some of your journey and how you've got to where you are now. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Perth, Western Australia.
In Perth. What did your mum and dad do?
Dad's a surgeon. Mum mostly looked after the 4 kids and did bits of stuff at his practice and various things over the years, but mostly our mum.
And what were you into at school?
Mostly hockey. And I was one of those. I went to a boys' school. I wasn't the cricket and footy guys were the tough kids.
The Sigmas, as they're called now. They're Sigmas now. It's moved past Alpha. Wow, it's now Sigma.
Interesting. But my things were hockey and drama, school plays, choir, until I got kicked out in year 8 or whatever.
Well, why'd you get kicked out?
I missed missed a choir practice because of sport or something, and then I got a detention that was over choir practice, so I missed another one because of the detention for missing choir practice, and I was just so pissed off with Mr. What's his name that I bailed, and I quit piano at about the same time.
When did you start piano?
I did about 4 years of lessons.
As a kid?
Yeah.
Instigated by your parents or yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
My brother played guitar, I played piano. I did about 4 or 5 years of lessons.
But then you quit that?
Then I quit that, yeah.
Why'd you quit the piano?
I wasn't practicing and I wasn't particularly good at it. And I was okay at school. So I was one of these, and I was a bit cheeky in class. So I was totally fine, you know, A's and B's, because it wasn't really accepted in my family. My mum and dad would have accepted C's if they thought I was working hard, but they were like, "You just take the piss. You got to work." So it was, we were held to account. Nothing shouty or anything, just a sense of family expectation. But yeah, I played, you know, A hockey. So I was in the first 11 in year 11 and 12. You know, I was like always I played hockey 5 times a week, you know, club and school.
Right.
Yeah.
You were a hockey boy.
Yeah. And even when I was young and asthmatic, I was quite good at hockey. But then halfway through my teens, I realised I could get around a 1,500 metre course all right. And I was like second division stuff. But it just slowly, I was a bit of a useless kid, a bit asthmatic and allergic and a bit of a pudgy kid and stuff. And then through my teens, I just kind of grew out of everything. And that's when I started running. But yeah, I was just fine at school.
And the creativity, like school plays?
School plays, but never got the big roles.
You mentioned Will. We used to do house plays. I was in Cranswick, Dargo, which was blue. Will was in Tisdall, Hotham, which was yellow. And a teacher this is the Gippsland Grammar School out in the Latrobe Valley. I presume the teacher would assign a play for Tisdall, Hotham to do. And Will, I reckon it was year 10, from nowhere, he just wrote the Tisdall, Hotham play.
Yeah.
And it won by the length of the straight.
Such an interesting cat.
And then it won, he did the same in year 11. And I remember the excitement to watch Tisdall Hotham in year 12.
What's Will going to write?
And they were bloody hilarious.
Yeah.
I can still picture his sister was the same line she was saying and just having the whole school in the palm of his hand.
Yeah,
so
amazing.
You weren't getting the lead role?
No. Everything happened a bit slower for me, but all through those years, I went back to my piano without any formal training and just started working out chords, and then started playing blues scales and found that
just taught yourself.
Yeah, and I just sort of found my own way of playing piano.
When I watch you play the piano, because I don't play the piano, I look at it and think, oh my God, that's amazing coordination and skill. So compared to like a concert pianist, where are you as a pianist?
Piece of shit. But
okay.
But
so you're not in the VFL. You're in the
well. I guess.
Well, because I watch, as I say, I've got no. It's freaking amazing.
So when I listen to jazz players, I just go, I'm so upset. I want to shoot myself.
Because
when
you're
I
not as
listen
good
to
as them.
classical players, I feel the same.
Okay.
I have things I do well. In fact, there's a couple of things that I might do as unusually well on a global thing, including my ability to talk and improvise at the same time, or like improvise an entire song under, like if I was sitting here now, I could like basically accompany myself in my speech whilst thinking about what I'm going to say next. I could go on the phrase whilst thinking about what I could say next. I'd go like that sort of, there's something interesting there. And also I know there are classical players who come and see me and jazzers who come and see me who do think I'm a good pianist. So I have no idea, but I would say compared to the proper world-class people, I'm a hack, but I'm probably a better pianist than Elton John and probably better than, in some ways, than Billy Joel. And so when in the pop echelon, you know, but what does better mean? It depends what you're doing. I can't sing like Elton John or Billy Joel.
Well,
that's for sure.
I'm just a punter, but I think you're amazing. I'll get you back to your journey.
Yeah.
But I was looking, of all the things that I watched in the last 2 days you do, you were on the BBC, and ostensibly the theme of the song was people drift off after 3 minutes on the BBC.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And I'm writing a 3-minute song. And you finished and you looked at the camera because there was a timer up the whole time on 3 minutes. Now, I spend my life having to count to a certain point.
An ad break or whatever.
An ad break.
Yeah.
But it blew me away. So you get invited on that show.
Yeah.
It was, I really, really enjoyed it.
Was that the Ruth Jones version?
How long does it take to write something like that for you? Is that a month or an hour? I loved it. I've watched it 4 times.
The 3-minute song I'm quite proud of because that was a song like
28 billion people have watched it.
Yeah, I would write a song for Jonathan Ross. I'd write, and I didn't do that for long because it's sort of unsustainable. But I had come from being in Melbourne playing tiny gigs and writing songs for corporate gigs for $300, you know. But that song took me 2 days, I think.
How do you memorise it? So if I'm memorising footy numbers, I've got a theory in my head and it's structurally how it works. There's a lot of lyrics in that song.
Yeah, I might have had them on an auto cue because I only finished it the day before. Might have. But to time a song perfectly, there's a cheat. You can have a thing in your ear with a click track, so it looks like you're timing it. But
what's the click track?
A click track's just doing beats, so you just play along to it,
but it's not counting down.
No,
you're not getting in your ear like a DA.
That song is you're playing in time, so you can't as long as the click goes beep boop 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 beep boop boop boop, and you know to start on one of the third bar, then you have unless you F up, you have to end.
That was so good.
But I didn't do that. I wanted it to be loose, so I just learnt where I needed to be by what time, and I have under my control tempo, and also there was a little improv bit that you'll notice I rushed through the end because I know I've only got 8
you've
seconds
got to get
left.
to the end.
So there's the built-in sort of flexibility in. But yeah, I'm proud of that song.
Mate,
that song
it was
stands
brilliant.
up. Yeah.
I watched it 4 or 5 times.
Oh, good man.
So you study in the West, and then every athlete. We get to the finished product. We get to Nat Fyfe and his 2 Brownlows.
Yeah.
But it's not linear, and he has ups and downs along the way. And skinny Nat Fyfe taking a mark in the goal square and kicking his first AFL goal is very different to the 2-time Brownlow medalist. Very, very different. 20-odd kilos different. So you come to Melbourne with what ambition? At what age and with what ambition? What are you going to do?
I came to Melbourne at 26, having got married to my girlfriend who I got together with when I was 17, and
your wife's name is
Sarah,
and
we thought we'd have a crack, you know, because when you come from Perth, you know, you either move to
What were you doing in Perth? What were you doing to pay the bills?
Lots of stuff, like piano bars, wedding bands. I had a disco band called Jungle Boogie. I
love this stuff.
I did Shakespeare in the Park. I had played a role. I had just finished a role in a play called The Return, written by Jeremy Sims. I was doing everything I do now.
You know what you are?
But just for nothing.
You're a decathlete. That's what you are in sporting terms.
I'm glad you said athlete at the end of that.
Decathlete. You're a decathlete. Yeah. And so not getting paid a great deal as a bits and bobs man.
Perth, I was doing all right. Like there's a bit of myth that's come up around my career for people who know about my career that I was sort of nothing and then suddenly bang. Certainly in terms of public profile, I was nothing. But around Perth, people saw me as someone sort of with raw talent that was trying to find what they were doing. So I moved to Melbourne. I had recorded an album.
Where'd you move into?
Moved into North Fitzroy, into a rental.
Of course you did.
36 St George's Road South, 38 St George's Road South.
You'd recorded?
I had recorded a demo album, a pretty high-quality demo album with my brother and my band in our share house.
What was the band?
The band was called Timmy the Dog, after the famous Five character.
We are the Five.
Julian, Dick and George and Timmy. I mean, that was the sort of level of irony I was working on. It was a weird record with funny songs and serious songs, which ended up being what I am now allowed to do. I'm allowed to do a concert.
What was the album called?
Sit.
Is it available?
No.
You're pretty quick no on that.
I've just re-recorded a few of them. I might release them. I've re-recorded a couple of them that have stood up over time.
Timmy the Dog Sit.
And I thought, so the 2 goals were I'm going to try and get a record deal, or at least try and get a new band because my brother and co weren't going to move to Melbourne. I built a new band and I called it Rosencrantz. And
what's Rosencrantz?
Rosencrantz is a character out of Hamlet. You know,
okay.
Why aren't I a rock star? I've got so many cool rocking ideas, like referencing Famous Five and Shakespeare in my band names.
Why wasn't it gelling with the audience?
Exactly. Well, but in the end, of course, I got known for writing about the fact that I'm a rock and roll nerd. You know, but I thought I would and then I kind of started trying to get an agent as an actor. So I cut my hair off and I was like, I'll try and just audition and be an actor. But I was untrained.
Was this when you were in Melbourne?
Yeah, this is in Melbourne. So I tried to get an agent and I auditioned for The Lion King. And then I started playing a lot of piano for cabaret artists, for Eddie Perfect and, a girl band called the Fabulous Singlets. And I had worked for Todd McKenney, the boy from Oz. Like I was a working pianist, even though I couldn't read music.
I was watching you play the piano in look like a Westfield shopping town with Todd McKenney in a big grey suit.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like it took a long time. It feels like the distance between Nat 5 Skinny and Nat 5 Brownlow was a lifetime. But like with Nat, it was only 8 years. And with me, I moved to Melbourne in 2002, and by the end of 2005, I played at the Royal Albert Hall, but that felt eternal.
So before we get to that...
Oh, yeah. I played in a cover band at the Elephant Wheelbarrow for every Friday and Saturday night. Elephant Wheelbarrow City on Fridays. Elephant Wheelbarrow St Kilda Saturdays with a band called the Sea Monkeys, who are this awesome
What type of
bunch
covers
guys.
are you doing?
Well, I'm just playing keyboards at the back. They let me sing a song for a little while, and they were like, "Yeah, nah, I think it's a bit weird, mate." I was just like singing a Pearl Jam song or something, but they were like a quite blokey band, and the lead singer Dara is really handsome and a really good singer, but quite like a footy. They were Bombers fans. Oh no. Anyway, they were quite blokey, and the people who went to the Elephant Wheelbarrow loved him, and the girls swooned. Whereas I was like throwing myself around the stage, and they're like, "Yeah, mate, that's a bit much. You could go back behind the keys. Love you." They were really good guys.
So when you were playing in Melbourne, and before success starts to come your way, I'm not sure that's the right term. Are you playing the piano, and how many people are coming to watch?
Oh, well, I was playing right here at the Butterfly Club in South Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I did a whole show one night for 2 people.
Was it a good show?
I said, just sit there, let's do it. Come on.
How do you get up for 2?
You just go, well, what's the learning here?
And what was the learning?
I can make 2 people comfortable enough to laugh, and I can do it. It's
quite
unbelievably
intimate.
awkward, and I can make them feel not awkward. That was the learning, I guess. But then I'd pack that room out quite a lot, and it was once I realised what I was doing was I was calling it cabaret, but once I went, this is kind of comedy, really, and I changed what I called it, and I changed my hair and made it a bit more consumable. It was very quick.
Tell me about having consumable hair. What is consumable hair?
Well, what I mean is I would sit on stage in a T-shirt and jeans with my sort of half-grown out curly hair and just looking pink, because I go pink. I'm pink now because of this light. And I no shoes, and at the Elephant Wheelbarrow, it's not even a big enough room to have a microphone. So it's just me and an upright singing acoustically. And I look at the footage, and you're like, well, you look like a clever guy who doesn't really have any... There was no icon. There was no idea of me as a kind of character. Like, look at Will.
Yes.
Like, Will's a lovely guy, but he's unbelievably good looking. So that he's got that, which I didn't have. And, he's got his black nails, and he's got... You when you think of Will Anderson, you sort of... You understand that you can consume him, that you go like, I know what Will Anderson is. And somewhere at the end of 2004, I straightened my hair.
How do you do that?
Oh, it's chemical, like perm. Go to a Japanese hair.
A few more details on this, please. So you've got like curly hair.
I've got quite curly hair, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I've been straightening it every 6 months for 20 whatever years.
So it lasts
now.
6 months.
Oh, well, it grows out. It's permanent, so it grows out, so you can see the kink coming out here. But
they put chemicals in it.
Yeah. For a couple of hours, you have to sit there, and they perm. It's like a perm.
Okay.
It's straight instead of curly. And I started wearing more makeup.
So wearing mascara.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something? Because
is that available to you in your career?
Well, I've always looked at Daniel Johns, who wears mascara, and I think he looks amazing.
He's very beautiful.
Yeah, he is. But so do
you wear a lot of makeup when you go on the telly.
Yeah.
But if you had really blonde eyelashes, they might just put a bit of mascara on you so your eyes pop.
Yeah, maybe I need to first test.
Maybe after this, I'll do it. We can have a little trial.
Yeah. Have a look on the first test and see if I pop up with eyes popping. But so mascara, this is a bizarre question, but do you put it on in front of the mirror and think, yeah, this is my look, or did you try some rouge or lipstick or like how do you develop that?
So I'm a theatre kid, so I had always done plays, and when you do plays, you have to wear makeup because the audience is a long way away from you, and they need to see your face, right?
Yep.
So you wear
quite heavy makeup,
especially when you go pink like me under lights. You wear quite strong makeup, and when you're very fair. So right now I tint my eyebrows. So if you're very fair, your face just looks like a blob of white. So you put your eyebrows on, you put eyeliner on the inside, whatever. Not to look like you're vamping, not to look like you're wearing makeup, but just to make your face pop. So I was just used to it, and I guess I was like watching the Mighty Boosh, and I was a fan of like Robert Smith from The Cure, and for me it wasn't unusual that. So it never struck me as weird. I was just like, at some point I sort of thought, okay, I'm pretty good at piano and I'm super fast with my words, and my part of my thing has always been this high intellectual status thing, and I sort of had this idea of this wide-eyed, eyeliner-y kind of guy who was with big hair like Beethoven or whatever, Mozart, and a long coat, and that I'd be sitting there going blah, 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 like slightly aping virtuosity on the piano, and swearing my mouth off, and I understood that this was, and even like go back to look at The Little Tramp, the what's his name, famous mime artist of old,
Marcel Marceau?
No, the most famous, Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, right.
The big coat. There's lots of things that I don't think I realised that were playing into this look I created. But when I look in the mirror and put my makeup on, I just think I look nicer. And I'm from a world, like I'm from a musical theatre world and stuff, where it's a very queer world. It's the opposite of footy. Shouldn't be, but it is.
Shouldn't be.
Which isn't to say footy needs to be like musical theatre, or God forbid musical theatre needs to have the testosterone-riddled madness of footy. But we all agree that you shouldn't not feel like you can be there. But so there was no, it didn't shake my masculinity or anything that I liked wearing makeup. I just, as a fair guy, I went, look how good my eyes look. And it freaking worked. I mean, I was never going to be Will Anderson in terms of how I look, but I created so that's the consumable. I created an iconic idea that people could grab onto,
And before they grabbed onto it, and a lot of athletes get to this point, a lot of people that succeed, they have a point where it's like, this is so freaking hard. Is this the path for me?
Yeah.
Should I do something else?
Well, Sonny Walters has a great story about that. His first year being a bit overweight, and
is it for me?
Yeah, he just went, maybe this is too hard.
And maybe Sonny would have gone on to do something else amazing in the world. Who knows? But did I don't know the answer to this. Did Tim Minchin get to a point where it's like, is this going to work when I'm playing in front of two people, or you just had complete faith that this will?
No, never faith. I had enough evidence from reasonably young that when I did some of the things I do, people would be like, "Wow, you're talented" or something. So I always had. It was never faith-based. It was never self-belief. It was just evidence. It's like, oh no, I'm better than some people at this shit. But definitely Sarah and I wanted a kid, and she was social working, and I wanted her to be able to take a break. She didn't want to just take 8 weeks off and go back to social work. A hell of a job, working at St Vinny's and stuff, really tough. And I had times when I was earning as much as her, if you count the cashies and the, in our industry.
Hello to the Australian Tax Office.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
8 years.
I'm pretty freaking nerdy. I remain very nerdy about that stuff. But, there were a few cashies at that point. I still wouldn't have got over the first threshold. But still,
not enough cashies these days.
Not enough.
There's not enough of them.
But I thought, the thing I thought was that I'd be a really good teacher, or that there are other things I'd be good at. And I've always been very aware that you don't get to be an artist just because you want to be. It's really competitive, and if there's no audience for what you got, I mean, I do understand some people can't not be an artist. That's just what they are. I was more like, if I can't find an audience for what I've got, I'll still want to contribute something to the world.
Would you have been okay with that as a teacher, or a piano teacher, or whatever it may have been?
I think in my late 20s, I was brought up by people like what are you going to do, mate? You can't sit around. And, definitely brought up, there's no dole, no grants, I didn't have any gifts. It was just like work in a pub, work in a cafe, do the shitty cover band gigs that you don't like. So I never had that. I'm not judging people, but I would never have, because I grew up middle class, I would never have assumed society owes me my artistry. I'm a bit pragmatic about that. So I had come to terms with the idea that I might have to go back and do a dip ed or something, and I would have been excited by that, or go back maybe and do a master's and be a bit more academic. But somewhere around there, around my late 20s, just before everything went boom, I think I had decided that that's all bullshit and that I was going to be poor and happy and a muso. I think I got to the point of going, nah, I'm afraid this is it. This is what I do. And then quite soon after that, it became a non-question.
So you said things went boom. So you put together your show at the Melbourne Comedy Festival.
Yeah.
And then that gets you invited to Edinburgh. Mm-hmm. Well, so you got a review. So let's talk about reviews for a moment. Let's just hold it. Yeah. So after 2005 in Edinburgh, where you won the Best Newcomer Award, congratulations,
Thank
Tim.
you very much.
The review: he plays like an angel, sings like a rock star he always wanted to be, and has a devil of a sense of humour. So let's be pro stuff at the moment. When you get a review like that, how does it make you feel?
Oh, it feels very validating. And when I went to Edinburgh, I could feel that things were hotting up. But it was very unusual. I went straight into like a 300-seat room, which is not usually what you do. And the producer put a lot of chips on me, and we worked very hard to earn an audience. But yeah, at the end of the first week or somewhere around there, I started getting these 5-star reviews. And in Edinburgh, that means everyone comes, everyone talks about you, and then you get a nomination or whatever. So it was bonkers, and there's a documentary that tracks me through this time. So if you want to see me holding on by my fingernails,
what does that mean?
Well, I took and probably take myself quite seriously.
You haven't in this at all.
Well, no, this is.
Haven't.
I mean, well, I'm like.
That was my concern coming in here.
Oh no! Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, that was why I had some anxiety about doing this.
Yeah,
I was like, well, but anyway.
Well, I hope I'm not overdoing it, but
no, not at all.
So
what is hanging on by your fingernails?
Well, suddenly I was the thing everyone's talking about, which is very exciting.
Fame.
Well, it's just. Because I never took it for granted that I get to be an artist. I've had this sense of this is my, meanwhile my wife's pregnant, I think, by then. I can't remember. There was a pregnancy we lost, but it was all happened at the same time. And there were people saying, sign with this agent, but all the things that I never thought would necessarily happen, although I'd started to think maybe they were happening. But meanwhile, you have to do 27 shows in 26 nights or something.
Jeez.
And I'm screaming my guts out, I'm sucking on lozenges that don't work, but it's placebo of choice, and my placebo of choice, I came home with holes in my teeth. But I wasn't drinking, which is really weird to me now. I was just like, don't fuck this up. I do have that slightly sporto Aussie bloke, like, come on, Minchin, don't, this is your fucking moment. A little bit of that in my head, a little bit private school toxicity. But I just, you can feel the anxiety of the chance there for you to grab, and make sure you grab it right. Don't get distracted. You can see it in this documentary that I'm trying to make good choices, because I feel like it only really comes along once. I was probably thinking too small. I didn't realize that really from that moment forward. It was just a matter of what door I wanted to knock on. But that attitude, that like doubling down, that like when someone gives you the gift of a career, not going, hey, I'm done, but thinking, okay, now what?
Well,
that personality is why I've got to do 20 years of really various work, because I'm not a rest on the laurels personality.
And when agents start courting you, and I presume your accommodation is all of a sudden a fair bit nicer, people are coming up to you on the street saying the type of things that I spoke to you about at the start, how did you keep, as a bloke from Perth that had been, playing, you played to two people, and then straight after that you're at the Royal Albert Hall and in front of 5,000 people, and I watched a bit of it. It said coming up next, Mariah Carey.
Yeah. Me then Mariah Carey.
Are you hanging out
me
in the
doing
green
a song
room?
about an inflatable doll.
Right. Were you hanging out in the green room with Mariah Carey?
I did. I met her.
Right.
I mean, she's got her own anxiety. You know, she's just a kid from somewhere.
Well, like the footballers we're
right.
talking about.
Yeah, right.
So how did you handle this explosion of fame?
It wasn't quite as fast as that, although I did some big gigs straight away. I then started touring. I came back to Australia. I had to write another show, all that. But then the following year, we moved to England when Sarah was 7 months pregnant with Violet. We moved to London away from our family. Can you imagine doing that?
It's a big move.
She is, in hindsight, I didn't quite realise how amazing she is. But and then we, got a little rental, that I thought, oh my God, can we really rent this place? It's amazing. And
where was it?
It's tiny. It's in North London. It's
nice.
a tiny upstairs flat, but it had an attic conversion where I could write, and I just thought,
what you blow me on?
well, not actually.
Right.
Finsbury Park, then W3 to Crouch
Okay.
End. Yeah. Alexandra Palace, actually. And then 500-seat art theatres, and then the next year 1,000-seaters, and then a little run on the West End. And so it happened quickly, but not absurdly. In fact, it for me, it just felt like a sort of fair graph. But there was a point at which, yes, I'd take the kids out and I'd understand that people were, whispering. And that can be psychically a head fuck. And I think about those AFL boys and girls and
equally where I am here in
who-
Melbourne, or you in Perth. Like in Perth, heavens above, it's a freaking fishbowl
yeah,
for the AFL
but
boys, isn't it?
like I'm sure you have thoughts on this. I don't think it's good for people, and you've got to really think carefully about what it's doing to your sense of self, because the self should sit inside you. And when you are as a mammal, when you understand all the mammals are looking at you, you sort of, I think the camera of the self sort of comes outside you a bit, and it can make you really self-loathing and shitty. And then suddenly you've got 10,000 people standing up and cheering you, and you feel like a god. And then you feel fat, and then you like it just rocks everything.
And that moment when you're playing, I was watching a clip, and I presume you were playing in an arena by this stage, and you had a clip singing about playing in arena, and
nothing
trying to connect.
ruins comedy like arenas. Yeah.
What else? What's the next part of that? Yeah.
That is a well-established fact, but your enjoyment is not as important as my self-esteem is. My ego's the only thing you can see clearly from the back, but I'm quite famous now, so suck my balls.
That's it. So you can tell this audience that will grab them. I know who listens to this.
Yeah.
So, when you're playing in front of those huge audiences all of a sudden, like, life must change in many ways, financially, recognition level. Did you keep your feet on the ground, Tim?
Yeah, I did.
Well done.
And I
Well
did
done to
because
you.
I got brought up by people who were a bit like, keep your head in. Not though. My mum and dad are the best, and I'm from the closest, like a weirdly close family. My siblings and I all talk all the time. My mum's just gone, but my mum just died. But we all talk all the time, and we I've just got values instilled in me that luckily. So I was going to say the kids who get like can't walk the streets. Like imagine being Nick Nat or something like,
I can't.
or like where you cannot walk out in Perth without being absolutely, and you're young and you haven't established who you are. You haven't established your value system. I'm always really impressed by those guys. Like those Dockers boys that I get to talk, they're just such good people because they have to focus on their job, I suppose.
Yeah, I think too, especially in that sport now, they draft quality of person as well as
I think so,
quality of
but there's a
footballer.
couple of big stories in the last few years of people who can't handle it, especially the super, super beautiful ones who are basically little gods.
Absolutely.
And I totally have huge sympathy for those kids. But I was all right. And then I did a slightly unusual thing, which is I made some decisions to put the brakes on how fast it was going.
Why?
Partly because I thought fame is bad and not good for my kids, and partly because I'm very ambitious, which sounds paradoxical. So I got to 10,000 seaters and arenas, and I basically quit comedy and have remained. I haven't written a comedy song apart from the Pell song, apart from a couple
because
of political things. Yeah, so
you didn't want to be defined as that.
Exactly,
you didn't want to be stereotyped as.
I wrote in amongst that journey. I wrote Matilda, and Matilda is, I don't know if Australians quite get this, and I don't want to sound like a wanker, but just to be clear, it's the most successful British musical of the century. It's still running. It's like it's a one in a, it's a huge thing, Matilda. And it's not just huge as in it's been running on the West End for 13 years and all around the world and all that, but it's huge because of the impact it makes. Like millions of people have seen it, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of little girls and boys that's been their first visit to the theatre. It changes lives. It's a story about a young girl standing up to bullies and reading lots of books, and it's like, it's such a good thing to be in the world, and it's not mine. There's dozens of people involved in making that.
What about the fact that you've written the music and the lyrics for a story written by Roald Dahl, who has brought joy to millions
so I'm part of that world.
People.
Like I know
How long did it
Roald's
take to do?
widow very well and stuff, and so because I had written that and I was doing arenas and stuff, but in there I had done some acting. I always knew I wanted to act, and I knew that as a comedian it's hard to also be an actor. Like if Will's done a bit, but if Will turns up in an Australian TV show, you're like, oh, it's Will Anderson.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Okay.
Because he's so ubiquitous as a comedian.
Yeah,
I knew,
understand.
and a panelist, and I got offered panel shows, and I went, I don't want to be a panelist. I'm better than, like, I've got more to give than a panelist. I don't want to be so recognisable that people just go, you're from 8 out of 10 Cats. Because I had this unbelievable gift of Matilda, which taught me that if you put your head down and dedicate yourself to a collaboration, you can make something that can actually change culture, not just make you more famous.
How long did it take you to write that?
Well, Sarah was pregnant with our second kid when I was on deadline there. So there was like a 6 or 7 week period where I wrote like 10 songs, many of which remain in the show. But then there was like 2 years of workshops where things were adjusted and I wrote more stuff and things. But when I get my head down, I can make shit.
Two questions out of that, because I wanted to ask you about Matilda, but we started this part of the conversation by reading out your magnificent "He plays like an angel, sings like a rock
Are you going to
star."
read the opposite?
No, I don't have the opposite, but is it seared into your mind, the opposite? Like what's a bad one? But give me an idea of what they've said and then how that affects you as a performer.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I think it's human nature, and especially my nature, to hear the negatives. We said at the very beginning of this conversation that I find it hard to stay present to the blessing of all the beautiful people who say those beautiful things about my work. I find it easy to be incredibly knocked sideways by people.
One person's opinion.
Yeah.
One person's tweet nowadays.
Yeah. And of course now there's pile-ons as well. And in my world, because I do talk big ideas and I have in the past engaged in tough political moments.
So what has rocked you?
Well, in the early days, when you're at Edinburgh and suddenly you're the hot new thing, there's an immediate backlash. It's like a career in a month. You have all the people going, he's great. And then, of course, you have to have the people going, he's not all that.
I went and saw him. He was bloody shit.
Yeah, that's right. And so I got a 1-star review for The Guardian. And The Guardian at that point was the paper I read, and for something like a year, if you typed in my name, that was what came up, because it's maybe it just came up in my feed. I don't understand the algorithms, but it's a very, very
maybe because you're looking
in
at
the arts.
Maybe
that's right. Yeah.
Same
reason that naked women on horses kept coming up. You like how gentle that joke was?
It sounded pretty specific to me, to be honest. Game of Thrones type territory that was.
Yeah, you just should be lucky I discarded about 3 other jokes. It's mad in hindsight how much that knocked me sideways, that someone could just be part of it. My last big part, I get called all sorts of things. It used to come from the right wing over here because, the big columnists like Bolt and Devine and all those guys had it in for me for obvious reasons that we don't need to go into. But so there'd be a whole section of Australia who only really know me as saying things they disagree with, even though I've got this whole body of work, and just hate me, right? And what knocks me is the human capacity online to get glee out of that, and I'm not. I get that it's a human thing, but like, so when I say something on a podcast and it gets taken out of context, or I'm misunderstood, or maybe I misspeak, and someone grabs the clip and says, "Look, Minchin's a whatever bigot," and then they pile on. It's not just that I'm being called a bunch of stuff which is just patently false and untrue and incredibly sort of mean or whatever. It's I get so disturbed by their glee. Like,
it's a hard thing to fathom.
A pity, but they're not bad people. They're just the mechanism by which they're communicating dehumanises us all. It's why I'm off all of it now. I'm very lucky I can pay people to make it appear that I'm still there. I mean, I still post, but I send it to an assistant because I can't be anywhere near that shit now.
Yeah.
I'm sort of PTSD about it or something.
It's a strange world. You went, yeah. That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, it is a whole discussion. Anyway, get off social media, people.
Yeah,
I thoroughly recommend it.
That's great advice. Yeah. You went to LA, and you can explain to the project and what happened, because I was like, wow, that's a lot of money to just put up the chimney.
Yeah.
But before that project, as a creative, talented person that everybody is interested in, possibly wants a piece of, wants to work with, what is LA like when you're that guy?
Well, actually, moving to LA was a bit about getting away from recognition and a bit about the sort of that Matilda philosophy. Why don't I do a big project that could have a real big impact on kids and, ideas? So I actually weirdly went to Hollywood to get less famous and to step back behind the camera. So I co-directed an animated film for 4 years, on and off. I was still doing other stuff and still touring a bit back in the UK, but mostly I shut down the big touring machine. I didn't write another comedy show. I went to dedicate myself to this thing. So I wasn't. There's no doubt. They say there's no such thing as a bad meeting in LA, and that's true. They're just full of shit,
Is it how I picture it, like at a fancy restaurant and slick suits, or
a big
beautiful
building
people
and lots of assistants? And can I get you anything? And you sit down and, hey, Tim, it's so great to meet you. I am such a big fan. Like, it doesn't matter who they are, an agent, a producer, a promoter, or whatever. I'm such a big fan, which can mean they're such a big fan and they've watched everything I've ever done. Or, a week ago when I found out I was having this meeting, I watched 2 hours of my stuff. Or 2 minutes ago, my assistant put your Wikipedia page in front of me and I've never fucking heard of you. They all say the same thing and they send you out feeling like you're their new favorite thing, and they will not stop until you are, A-lister, until you have your own film company and are making features, and then you never hear from them again. It's all a lie until one day it's not. It's like this is before I moved to LA, but I once went over there to do just a fundraiser, Eddie Izzard and me and maybe Jim Jeffries, a couple of people doing a charity gig. And there was my manager found this audition for Californication, which was one of the biggest shows in the world at the time. And I'm like, I'm not going to get this role. But I looked at it and it said, an English rock star who's going to write a musical of David Duchovny's book, And I went, I can do that. I went and did the audition. And I still had my makeup on from the night before because I never quite get it off, and my hair's or whatever, and I'm in my skinny jeans. And, to them I sound English, and I find it quite easy to kind of just put an English edge on it. I did this audition and they're like, so do you want to do a different version? Do you want to... And I'm like, no, I think that's it, really. And they're like, okay. And I walked out again, got in my car thinking that's just another bullshit American meeting. And I'd driven 20 minutes back to my house, to my hotel. And my manager's like, can you go back? And I'm like, why? And they're like, they want to do a costume fitting. And I went, and then they wrote that character into the whole series. And suddenly I was in Californication. So it's a lie till it's not over there.
It must be a fascinating place to operate. I know I'm cognizant of we've got about 15 minutes more of your time. So you worked on the project for 4 years.
Yeah.
How much was spent on that project?
I reckon 45 million. I mean, it was halfway done in terms of budget. Those big animated musicals. It was a musical written by an Australian guy. It was like
Australian
Outback
actors,
Adventure.
Yeah,
all the big famous Australian actors.
And someone just...
Well, the studio got bought by another concern, one of the big guys, by Comcast, Universal, and they just it was like they had to decide on what projects they were going to shut down, because when you take over a studio, you're kind of obliged to tear it apart and make it anew.
Make it yours.
Yeah, make it yours. And this project it's like Lion King Oz. It was Hugh Jackman as this handsome kangaroo, and you know, it was monstrous. And the songs, I just listened to them first time. I can't listen to them because it's so traumatic, but I listened to them for the first time in years the other day, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so good.
So how do you find out? Is it a phone call?
Yeah, I was actually in Budapest filming and playing Friar Tuck in a massive Robin Hood movie when it was an email, actually. It was actually a phone call.
Take me to the moment if you can.
I kind of knew it might be coming, but I don't think I'd really let myself consider it.
Is it devastating?
Because I just couldn't believe they'd shut something down that everyone thought was good, and it was so far gone. But it was, I guess, high risk because it wasn't a franchise film. You know, it's a new story. It was called Larrikins. You know, it's like it was a new story. It was Australian outback adventure, and it was boys' own adventure. So it was all boys in a time when we were really starting to go, let's never tell a boys' story again, which is another whole discussion. I think we'll move past that stage pretty quickly. But there were lots of reasons why it shut down. I was in Budapest, or maybe I was in Paris by then, filming this film, and I don't know, man. My first thing was like, what am I going to say to the people?
So you're thinking of others. That's nice.
Well,
that's nice.
There's two. Well, that makes me sound. I mean, you know, when you're the leader. You know, if you're a coach of a footy team and you get told that, you know, or you're
out of the competition.
You're out of the competition or whatever, or your first your job is talking to your people. So I was really worried about that because so many people put their heart and soul into it, and I had led them to. I had asked them to. I'm quite good in that regard, in enrolling people into my passion, and I had asked them to trust me and, you know, let's make this the best thing ever. And so there was that, but also I've got a huge self-righteousness thing that kicks in those moments, like these fools. And I wrote quite a strong email to a very high up person in LA, and that might have been a bridge I set fire to that has maybe done damage forever.
Right.
But it wasn't abusive. It was just very me, which was like, I don't think you have I think you've made this decision without the expertise required to make this decision. I don't think you know anything about animation. I don't think you know anything about musicals, and I think you've made a terrible, terrible mistake. And she wrote back and said, I don't think you should speak like that. And I said, you don't get to shut down my film and then curate my response.
I like that you went back.
Anyway, I really admire this woman too, and I really liked her, but I wasn't going to go like, oh yeah, cool. Thanks for taking away 4 years of my freaking life.
Yeah,
I had to say, I genuinely believe that. I still do. I listen to it and I'm like, oh, this would have been a whole new franchise for DreamWorks. The character design, the toys they would have sold, like they just got the wobbles. They just didn't quite have the guts to inherit the risk and double down on it.
This period of time, I watched you numerous times on Conan.
Oh, yeah.
So,
God, he's a funny man.
Well, he is. Describe what it's like, because we've all watched these shows. You know, Steve Vizard had the Australian version, and there's Leno and Letterman. And I always sit there, for someone that works in media, and think, right, as a guest, you've got, I don't know, 6 minutes, whatever you got.
Yeah.
And you've got two famous people next to you, and you've got to make an impact, and you've got to make people think, well, I like this bloke. I'll go and watch Matilda the musical.
Yeah.
Like, what's involved in being a guest in that 6 minutes of being good on Conan, so people say, I want to go and see this guy?
I've never been asked about this stuff. I don't like it very much. It's not. So, as you know, when you ask me a question, I'm inclined to unpack the ideas behind it.
Yep.
I'm not, weirdly, for a comedian. I was going to say, talk just because we've been talking about Will.
Yep.
He's a bit of an ideas comedian too. I'm not an anecdotalist. Like Husey
that's
or
what
someone.
You need on that.
Exactly right. And they want you to pre-load your gun. They want to go, have you got a story? Let's work on it. They basically
they produce your story.
They just like want to know what story you're going to tell because they need the show to be funny. And even though I'm a little nobody from Perth, I have ego's not quite the right word. I have enough self-assurance to go, well, just ask me questions and tell me how funny you want me to be. And I'll just turn my funny dial up and if you had said, I just want you to be funny today, I would have been a different person.
Oh, shit, Tommy. We should have told him we wanted him to be funny.
No, like if you want me just to be funny.
No,
or
I know what you mean.
If you're just like, we got 10 minutes and let's be... Like, you can look for the joke, I suppose. I'm less interested. You know, I'm a retired comedian, basically. So it's not the role I see myself as having in the culture anymore. I'm this boring guy. But that's right, as you say, people take a lot of meaning from what I say. That's why I've become less a clown and more a like wannabe pseudo-intellectual philosopher wanker. But I looked back on one of those Conan ones recently because I've been archiving and I did all right on a couple of them, but it's not my happy place. I don't like being told I have to pretend I'm spontaneously answering something when I've prepped it. I hate that. I'm like, hold on, this is a chat show. Ask me a question. We'll see what happens. Like, come on. And I don't love those shows because I can feel the formula coming through and I can feel the strain. And even Conan, who's brilliant, you can see him. He's not really listening. He's just like, where's the next bit? It's not really an interview. It's a performance of the idea of an interview, which isn't to say that what comes out the other end of that machine is unbelievable amounts of brilliant content. But for me on that side, I don't love it.
Imagine being a host and like you say, they're not really listening, but they have the ability to produce a good show, which is what they're there for.
And they have to be thinking in 5 directions. What's next? Who's going to, what?
Yeah, I've got to get to the ad break. This is the most important question I have for you. Then I have one more at the end. This is the most important question I have for you. This defines you as an artistic decathlete, as I describe you in the main episode, as a father, as a husband, as a Aussie, as a Fremantle Dockers supporter. You're very good at eye contact anyway, but you need to look into my eyes as I ask you this. Tim Minchin, a man with a big brain, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes.
Oh, this is why the people come to your shows, because you are relatable.
I'm a man of the people.
You are a man of the people.
I love it.
Final question. We are privileged on this show to have quite a few people listen over the years and a lot of kids listen that want to achieve success. You've been very successful in numerous fields in the creative world. They might want to be pianists. They might want to be scientists. They might want to be runners. They may want to be footballers. Who knows what they want to be. But what advice, and as a father, you understand the weight of this question, what advice would you give to those people out there that are trying to achieve success in their chosen passion?
I think it's the best advice in terms of achievement is the lesson that gave the title to this book. You don't have to have a dream, which isn't to say you shouldn't have a dream. But whatever your ambition is, it's really important that your passion is directed at what you're doing now, not at some long-term goal that you can't control. I mean, look, if you're a sprinter and you want to go to the Olympics, I mean, there are steps you have to do.
Yeah.
And you'll know whether you're getting there. But most of us are not like that. And I suppose if you want to be an AFL footballer, thinking about your first grand final when you're 13 is going to distract you from the fact that you've got your under-13s preliminary final today. You just throw yourself with passion into whatever you love now, and the next step will reveal itself, because you can't control the long game. You can just dedicate yourself to the current thing. And that there's a side advantage to that, which is not only that the steps will build themselves, but you might find, if you're just really passionate about what's in front of you and not looking too far ahead, that there's something else that you didn't notice, that you hadn't thought of, that if looking too far ahead buggers up your periphery, to just lean on the metaphor. So if you're passionate about what's in front of you, that's what being incrementally ambitious means, then you might get to the goal you thought, but you might get to another goal. If you get addicted to a long-term goal, you might miss all the other opportunities, which is what my career is defined by, staying aware of the other possibilities.
How do we go with the aim of asking some questions you don't typically get asked?
You did very, very well, and I really enjoyed it.
Good.
And I'm always anxious to make sure I'm not a boring guest, but
you're a fantastic guest.
love talking about sport and how it connects to all these ideas.
Tim, you amaze me. Congratulations. You don't have to have a dream. You can buy the book now. You can see, just jump on Tim's website, because bloody hell, he's doing some serious shows and work and stuff, mate. Travel safe. Where are you going now?
I'm going home for 2 nights, and then I'm back here on Saturday, and Hobart on Sunday, and Sydney on Tuesday, and then Auckland on Wednesday.
Travel well, mate.
On
Thank
it goes.
you very much. Well done.
Thanks, Howie.
Well done, mate.
Thank you, brother.
That was bloody brilliant.